get started. Welcome to Markers and Milestones, where we explore the educational opportunities for young men and women beyond traditional college, all from a Christ-centered perspective. I'm Lee Bortons, and I'm with my co-host, Amanda Kleist. Today's Wednesday, September 20th, 2023, and we're joined by Madison Smith of Joshua Wilderness Institute. Thanks for joining us, Madison.
Yeah, of course. I'm so glad to be here.
These are always my favorite shows when it's Amanda's guests that are on, because I know I'm going to learn so much more about people than I knew before. So do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself? In general, I ask kind of some just logistical questions, and then Amanda takes over with more of the philosophical side of things. So tell us who you are and what's Joshua Wilderness Institute.
Yeah, so my name is Madison. I grew up actually on the East Coast in Georgia. I was a CC student myself growing up. I did Challenge A and B, and then Challenge 1 and 2, and my younger sisters were in Foundations, Essentials, and so kind of grew up in that world. I went to Toccoa Falls College, which is a private Christian school in Northeast Georgia, and then ended up finding my way out here in California at Hume Lake a couple years ago in 2021, and ended up working here at the Joshua Wilderness Institute, which is really a gap year program for 18 to 24-year-old students that exists for discipling students toward loving God and his word in order to set a foundation for a life worthy of the gospel. And so we really do that through education, formation, and application, teaching students to know God, to know his word, and the ways in which that shapes us and changes who we are, and then going out and applying that in practical ways through trips, through work experience, a lot of different ways that students are able to take what they're learning, see it firsthand, and experience, like, what does it look like to put my hand to work for the glory of God?
Thank you. So could you tell us, you said it's a gap year. When do you have a normal start date and a normal finish date?
Yeah, so it's a 9-month program. So the program starts in September and then it concludes in May. So we follow kind of a 2-semester school year, basically, with breaks, holidays. Our students are provided curriculum through Biola University. That's actually the program through which they take their Bible classes. And so we essentially kind of follow along with their schedule.
So you have some college credits that they can earn while they're in the gap year?
Yeah, a student will actually leave with what we call prior learning credits. These are equivalent to 4 classes with Biola. These can be transferred to Biola for class credit. But we've also talked to a couple other colleges, Christian colleges, that have kind of given us a verbal, yeah, we would probably take these credits as well. So if a student is interested in transferring those credits for college credit, then I would just recommend having a conversation with your admissions counselor from the Christian college of your choice.
Okay, that sounds great. So I'm going to ask you all kinds of questions related to CC and Joshua Wilderness, but I'm going to save them. I know Amanda is really pleased with what you guys are doing. So Amanda, why don't you take over for a while?
Well, Madison, it is good to see you, and thank you for coming. And did you just welcome a class recently?
We did. We actually started on September the 9th. So we are just 2 weeks in with a new group of students, and it's going really well. They're a really awesome crew.
So how many students do you have?
We have 36 students. And yeah, we have a maximum capacity of 50 here in the program. So generally that number kind of usually fluctuates from the 30s to 50, just depending on the year. Joshua actually was closed for 2 years during the pandemic. And so the last 2 years have kind of been a revamping of the program. And since then we welcomed in a new director, Dallas DeWitt, who was formerly one of the camp directors here at Hume. Because we have a lot of other youth camps and retreats that happen here as well. We're a part of the larger organization of Hume Ministries. And so, yeah, since 2021, we have a new director, completely new staff, and we've just been in the process of praying through what does it look like in light of this new generation, after the pandemic, to think through this program and the ways that it's always been done, or maybe ways that it could be changed in light of things that this generation has experienced.
Okay, so I hear talk about the fast. What is it? Tell us about it.
So the fast is what I've heard from students. The feedback that I've received from them is the fast is the most challenging, yet the most rewarding part of the program. So when a student comes to Joshua, we ask them to essentially lay down a few things that can potentially be distracting, addictive, or idolatrous in their life. Not things that are bad, things that we would say can be used for good, but things that can steal their attention away from their relationship with Christ. And those things are social media, movies, pre-recorded music, video games, and dating relationships. And so for the 9 months that a student is here, they step away from those things. And really there's 3 reasons that we ask a student to do that. First is because it gives them an opportunity to do something that's countercultural and different, because the Christian life is difficult and you're going to have to learn to say no to things that the rest of the world is participating in. And so how do we learn to say good no's, and to do that in the context of a Christian community where we support each other, back each other up? Gives us an opportunity to, like I said, step away from distractions. We want Joshua to be a place where a student can focus solely on their walk with the Lord and eliminate a lot of things that are kind of loud and noisy in our everyday life. We get to live out here in the Sequoia National Forest in the mountains. So this is already kind of an ideal space for a student to step away and be immersed in creation and step away from those distractions. And then lastly, it gives a student an opportunity to practice walking in the light, to practice confession, because we know that they're not going to come to this program and do this fast absolutely perfect. So we really believe that how you respond when you mess up says a lot more about your heart than whether or not you actually mess up to begin with, because we're all going to mess up. And how do we respond? Do we walk in the light? Do we come forward and, ask someone to walk alongside of us? And it gives students that opportunity to come to their staff and come to their peers and say, hey, I'm struggling with, giving this up, or I'm struggling with this temptation. Will you walk alongside me in that?
Great. I guess another question. So it's a residential program. Do students, what's the housing like? Is it dormitories, tents? What do you got going on out there?
Yeah, so we live in a huge, beautiful lodge at the very top of a hill. So Hume Lake is located, if you're unfamiliar, we're located in the Sequoia National Forest in Central California. We're a part of a Christian camp, but the Joshua program itself is here on the Hume property. It's just kind of set apart from everything else that's happening. So we're up here at the top of the hill. We have a big lodge that can house all of our students. And so it's in this building that every aspect of the program happens. So they live here, and each student is given a room that they share with one roommate. And we have a girls' hall and a guys' hall. We have a classroom here in this building, a dining hall, and a really large living room that we call the great room. And it's here in this building that they, do everyday life, share meals together, hear from a speaker every evening. We have a different speaker that comes to spend the week with us. We get to hear from that person. Just participate in community in this space together.
Sounds really good. Sounds familiar too. I put together a program a decade ago that was like that. So, and it's hard work. So I appreciate what you're doing, Madison. So, what's your recruiting process? So I know you just started. Should parents and students start looking a year out, or do they have some time? What do you suggest?
Yeah, absolutely. So we actually, our applications for this upcoming year just opened, and we are offering some early application scholarships. So I would encourage a student to get online, fill out an application, and just start that process of asking some questions. If you think you're interested in taking a gap year, I think there's a lot of students that are kind of already thinking, hey, I want to go to college, but for some students that's not the case, and college is not necessarily the path for every student. And we definitely believe that some students kind of take the long way around, or some students just decide not to attend college at all. But Joshua is a really great program that sets a student up for life beyond high school, and sets them up for the real world, but still in this Christian context where they get to do some challenging things, step out of their comfort zone, while also, being in the context of a Christian community. So if a student's considering, hey, maybe I would like to take a gap year, or I don't know if college is for me, we would ask you to just consider, like, maybe get online. We have a informational call that you can do with our staff just to ask more questions. But if you fill out an application, it doesn't cost anything. It doesn't tie you into the program, but it just gives you an opportunity to speak with our staff and see, hey, would this be a good fit for me or for my student with where they're at right now in life? And yeah, if you get accepted, then you have some time to kind of think about that. We encourage students to enroll as soon as they make that decision, because we operate on a rolling admissions, meaning it's a first come, first served basis. So once we reach our maximum capacity of 50, we're considered full. So we do consider or encourage students to go ahead and start filling out that application as soon as they think they would be interested.
And then what's your staff to student ratio? If
So
you had 50,
yeah.
50 if you were full.
Yeah, so we have 7 staff members. So we have our directors, Dallas DeWitt and Jen Smith. And then we have 4 of us who live here in this building. So I myself am the women's resident director. I live here in the lodge with students. I have a co-resident director named Tanner. He's the men's resident director. And then we have a full-time cook that lives here and does all the meals for students. Her name is Jess. And then we have Isaiah, who creates all of our media and marketing, all the videos you see online on our YouTube. And then we have our part-time administrator, who she's responsible for a lot of the recruiting. So if you are interested, you would be speaking with Cassidy. She's sending out a lot of email communication with prospective students right now. So yeah, 7 staff members to 50 students.
So, Madison,
Mm-hmm.
let's say I'm interested, and I can barely imagine sequoia trees, but I hear they're big. And will I be at Hume Lake at Joshua Wilderness Institute the whole time that I'm there with you?
That's a great question. Yeah, so a student does spend a lot of time, obviously, here on the property of Hume Lake. They actually work here at Hume on the weekends, so they get the opportunity to work in a camp context and serve guests, whether that be through the dining services, through custodial, or through activities like running the tube run during winter camp. So they do spend a lot of time here, kind of learning camp life and spending time here in the mountains. But we also travel a lot with our students. So we take 5 different trips with them throughout the year. And that kind of goes back to what I mentioned about the application of the program, is learning to apply what we're learning and studying here in the program to the real world. And so we begin our year with a camping trip here on our Hume property. We camp for a few nights with our students and give them an opportunity to kind of step away from distractions, set the tone for how they want to spend the year, and get to know each other in that context. And then once we've been kind of settled for a few weeks, we take a trip down to our partner camp called Hume SoCal. It's pretty close to Big Bear. We get to just do manual labor for them for 5 days in practice. What does it look like to just serve behind the scenes? That's a really fun trip for students, because it's the first time they actually leave the program, leave the mountain all together as a community. And then they have a Thanksgiving break and a Christmas break while they go home. But then in January, we actually go overseas for the first time. And we've been partnering for a long time. Joshua has a really great relationship with Students International, and they have a mission base in the Dominican Republic. And that's where we go down and serve with them. They have multiple ministry sites in the city of Jarabacoa, where they serve the local people through really practical vocations like teaching, education, physical therapy, things like that. So our students will be sent into those mission sites, and they'll learn from the local missionaries, how could I use my vocation to the glory of God? How can I use dentistry to point people toward Christ? And so we really get to learn, what does international long-term missions look like, and how can I use my vocation to serve the Lord? We spend 2 weeks there. And then when we come back in March, we get to go on what I think is the most challenging trip for Joshua students. You might think our international trips are the most challenging, but Los Angeles is usually the trip that pushes students out of their comfort zone the most, even though this is a city that most of them have been to. This is where we ask students to go and have conversations with strangers about Jesus, where we send them out to learn about worldviews that are different than their own. So they will visit Buddhist temples and the Scientology Museum on Hollywood Boulevard. They'll get to see Skid Row. They will ask questions to strangers at Santa Monica Pier. We get to go out and learn about people, and how can we point them, how can we direct the conversation to kind of asking them a little bit about their story, and then sharing what we believe, sharing what we're doing, and maybe even buy a meal for a stranger and use that as an opportunity to connect with them and talk about the gospel. And students always come back from that trip with incredible stories, incredible connections. And I think it's awesome because a student at CC learns a lot of worldview, right, in their curriculum. And so it's really cool, I think, for them to go actually get a taste of that in a place like Los Angeles and have conversations with real people. That trip is really awesome. And then we get to end our year in Israel. So students will study Old and New Testament all year here. They take an Old Testament class in the fall and a New Testament in the spring through Biola. And then it's really awesome for them to get to go to the Holy Land and get to open God's word where it happened. So they get to see these places they've been studying firsthand. And we have a really awesome tour guide that walks us through that entire experience. And yeah, students just leave that trip with a better understanding of scripture and a better understanding of the places that it happened.
That's great. So can you tell us what the fees are for this program?
Yeah, so the kind of like ticket or sticker price of Joshua is $25,000. However, no student pays that much to attend the program. So like I mentioned, students work here on the weekends, and they are able to, through our tuition deferment program, work some of that tuition off. Students guaranteed to make up to $2,500. Most students make more during their time here in the program. But we also have lots of scholarships available for a student that applies. We have a scholarship application that you will receive upon just applying for the program. So we strongly encourage students to do that. We also really encourage you to fundraise. A lot of our students are here because their churches and their communities have rallied around them and sent them here to the program, which is a really sweet way to be kind of loved on by your community. And then we also offer as an option that a student can stay and work here at Hume the following summer after the program. So they can stay here and apply for a job, maybe as a lifeguard or as a counselor for summer campers. And they can work here, and that money can continue to go into their tuition to pay off what they continue to owe.
It seems to be, something a lot of people are wising up to, is that if you can give students some more work study, they're more likely to come. So that's really, and that gives them a different experience.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Why is it called Joshua?
That's an amazing question. I'm glad you asked. So Joshua comes from the book of Numbers, when the spies are sent into the promised land. So God had promised this land to the nation of Israel and said, this land is for you. It's overflowing with milk and honey. And it was promised to them by the Lord. And so when they sent the spies out to kind of see, okay, what are we up against? Are we able to kind of move everybody in? They encountered some things that really freaked them out. And they came back and they were like kind of trembling, afraid. And there was actually only one person that was like, yeah, I believe that we can take the land. And that was a guy named Caleb. And so you might ask, why is Joshua not named Caleb? But it's because later on in the book, we see that it's actually Joshua who ends up leading the nation into the promised land, even though he was the one who was originally silent. He didn't say anything. He didn't speak up. Scripture tells us when they originally went into the promised land to scout it out. But he was the one that God ended up using to lead the people. And so Joshua is for the student that maybe starts out with some questions or maybe some doubts about, like, I don't know if I am a spiritual leader, or I don't know if I can do this. But scripture tells us that we can, and that the word of God is very near to us. It is in our hearts, in our mouths, so that we can do it. And so we believe that this is a time for a student to set a foundation for how they want to live the rest of their life. Like we always say, we don't care as much what you do with your life. You can do a lot of things with your life. What matters is how you live your life. And so Joshua is created to set a foundation for that, whether a student wants to become a mom or a doctor or a pastor. There's lots of options set before them, but what kind of foundation are we going to set now? Even in regardless of the doubts or where you're coming from, we want to encourage any student to have the confidence to step into what the Lord is calling them to.
That's great. Madison, you're very articulate, and I really appreciate that, because you're good testimony to classical conversations. We always meet these young men and women in their 20s who seem much more mature, and so I appreciate the devotion you have to your own education, the Lord, and serving these other young people. So, Amanda, I have lots of questions, but your turn.
Well, okay. So Madison, a question I ask, I think almost everybody on the podcast is, so the church is so important, and learning how to connect with the church is so important. You're on a mountaintop. How in that 9 months of really living life do you help these young people connect with the local church?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, it seems like this could be an isolating place, but from what I found being full-time employee here at Hume is we actually have a really sweet community, and we do have a local church, Hume Community Fellowship here on this mountain. And something that we do intentionally is that we don't require our students to participate or be members of the church, but instead we give them the opportunity to choose that. And our hope is that they choose to be part of the church. During their first week, our church elders come up and speak to the students about, hey, we want you to be part of what we're doing here. We give them volunteer opportunities to lead worship or work in the children's ministry. We do a church barbecue where they kind of welcome them in. And so we kind of started our first weeks of them being involved. This past Sunday, they actually went to church for the first time, this group of students. And it's always really sweet, the addition that they add to our community here at the church. And yeah, we have a very small church, but it does give them that opportunity to choose like how they want to be involved and how they want to regularly participate. Because once they leave this program and, once they're no longer living with their parents, that will be a choice that they make of, am I going to invest in my local church? And so we kind of present that as a choice for them, as opposed to like a required part of their schedule, because our hope and our heart for them is that they do choose that once they leave.
Okay. And that sweet small town church is definitely different than an LA experience.
Really. For sure.
You want to
Lee-
tell us some about the coursework?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So everything, the curriculum that the students receive is online. So they log into what's called Biola Learn. So each student has their own account through Biola. So it would be similar to taking an online class through Biola. However, it is a proctored class that they actually attend here in our building. So our directors, Dallas and Jen, are the ones that are the primary facilitators of those classes. And so what it really looks like is a student reading articles, and we have different books that they go through, and it's very discussion oriented. So a student will read through this content during the week, and they get to come back as a class and discuss, okay, what do we think about that? Like for example, spiritual formation, students were talking about conviction this morning, and they read an article and get to kind of discuss that as a community. So it's really neat to see them having these conversations and maybe even disagreeing on some things. Like, for example, we offer them a theology course that's taught by one of our church elders here, and they get to talk about some controversial theological issues together as a community. And yeah, the theology course would be an example of one that is not necessarily offered as a college credit. So they take 4 classes here that are transferable to Biola, and then they take a few others that are just classes for the purpose of their spiritual growth. For example, the theology class, we offer a missions class where students get to hear from missionaries around the world and ask them questions. What does it look like to live life on mission? What does it look like for you in Papua New Guinea as you're serving the local people there? And we have some missionaries that we have connections with that will Zoom in and actually, have a live discussion with our students. And then we do what I really love is our life skills class. And that happens every Friday morning. And we just kind of give students exposure to some practical life lessons. So that might look like someone from the community coming in and teaching a learning styles class, or an auto shop 101 class. Camping or cooking, just different practical skills that will set them up for life outside the program, because we believe that the Christian walk is holistic, and we can better serve other people when we are well-rounded in other areas. And so yeah, that's why we love life skills. It's just kind of a fun class that doesn't require any homework, but it's just for them as a community to learn some practical things. Really, the heart behind the classes is not that a student achieves an A. The heart behind the classes is that the student is growing spiritually. And so we really try to walk alongside of them. And Biola has done a really good job of kind of catering their classes to our program specifically, and just seeing like, how can we make this less about a letter grade and, about correct grammar or structure of sentences in the papers they're writing. And our focus when we're reading through that content is more of like, how is the student being shaped by what they're learning? And so Joshua is academically rigorous, but we also want the student who maybe struggles a little bit in school to be able to come here and still grow and not feel like they can't complete the program because they're not the strongest student academically, if that makes sense. We're really more concerned about the heart and the growth that's coming from the content.
So I hear a lot about reading and writing and discussions, which all are a big part of the heart of classical conversations. But
Absolutely.
so is math and science. Now,
Yeah.
you're out in the wilderness, and so I'm sure you get that kind of exposure and you got those life skills. But are there any math-based courses that they would take, or they're all literature?
No, it's not math-based courses. They're all either Bible, theology, spiritual formation courses. But yeah, I wouldn't say that we incorporate. We do have some speakers that come in and talk about finances, or that talk about, how does nature and science reflect the heart of Christ? And that's more specific to the speaker that's here for the week. But the Biola courses, I would say, center more are more Bible theology based classes.
Just wanted to make sure that was all clear, because you've shared a lot of different opportunities and experiences. It sounds like it's really a lot packed in those 9 months.
Absolutely. It is a busy time for our students. Students often describe it as the best, hardest 9 months of their life.
So,
Amanda?
question for you. I don't know if I like the outdoors. Why would I talk to you?
That's a good question. Because I mean, by nature, where we live, the outdoors are a really big part of our life. I think living at Hume has taught me that I have to learn to kind of surrender my plans or surrender my way of doing things, because we get 5 feet of snow and all of a sudden it's hard to get somewhere. Or, we're here and we have to shovel, or we have to rake and, kind of live here in the wilderness. Sometimes there's bears. So, you learn to just adapt and be cool with those things. But I would say Joshua is not a program. It's called the Joshua Wilderness Institute, but it doesn't have to be for the student that's like, I'm crazy about backpacking, or I'm an adventure nerd. Like, Joshua is not specifically for that student. But I would say it definitely pushes a student out of their comfort zone. And even in the sense that we travel overseas, even just transparently working here has pushed me to grow in many ways, because it teaches a student that hard things can be good. I think in our culture today, often, if something is seen as hard, it's viewed as bad. And we love that Joshua gives a student the opportunity to say, okay, like, through this process of doing something that maybe scares me or pushes me out of my comfort zone, how can I rely on the Lord more deeply in that, and see that, like, hard things are good, and that through Christ I can do things that are challenging.
That's great. What does a typical evening look like, since there's no social media and you're minimizing all the worldly experiences and you're tired? It's the end of the day.
That's a great question. Yeah, so we would have community dinner, and then right after dinner, that's where we get to hear from our speakers. So Monday through Wednesday, we have a speaker that speaks for usually about an hour in the evening. That might be on about apologetics for the week, or godly relationships. The speaker will come kind of with a designated topic. So we get to, as a community, hear from that person. The students engage in by asking some questions. That's kind of Monday through Friday, and then they get some free time to relax. On Thursdays, students go to what we call their pause family, and that's PAUSE, not pause as in dog paws. But it's an opportunity to pause from life here in the building and go have dinner with a family here on the mountain. So because Hume is such a large organization, it takes a lot of people to make life happen up here. So we have over 100 full-time employees that live here with their families on this mountain, that have homes up here. And so a lot of them have stepped up and said, hey, we would love to host students that are in the Joshua program. And so we give them what we call their designated pause family. So that was a group of 3 to 5 students that get to go and have dinner bi-weekly on Thursdays with a family that, cooks for them, has a game night for them, and gets them, just a chance to get out of the building and be poured into by another wise couple. And then if we're not having pause, we might be having what we call a theme dinner. This is honestly my favorite part of my job. Super, super fun. We basically have a big party once a month in our dining room. So we eat a meal that kind of matches a theme. So we do, this year we're doing Western night, we're doing Pirates night. We do 50s diner, a lot of different really fun themes, and students get dressed up. They eat a meal that matches the theme, and we usually have an activity afterwards. So say we're doing Western night next week, they'll eat brisket and get to ride a mechanical bull after dinner, and we do line dances together. So super fun, just night for students to, enjoy each other, do something fun as a community. We believe the Christian life should be joyful. So we get to, do something really awesome once a month for them. We also do girls' nights and guys' nights. Tanner and I get to plan just nights for the guys and girls to kind of break off and do something fun with just the girls or just the guys. Those nights get super crazy and fun. And then on the weekends, so Friday night, they would head off to work for the weekend. So a student would either have the weekend off or they'd be assigned a department at Hume to work for. So students, yeah, you can probably gather that students stay pretty busy. There's not a lot of time to maybe miss those things like social media as much as they would in other places. But in a student's downtime, I find that they enjoy, a lot of just simple things like board games together in the great room, sledding when it's snowing outside. But students are also during the time here memorizing the book of Philippians. So a lot of that time is spent memorizing, which I was actually talking to my mom earlier, and because she taught me when I was in CC, and she was like, CC actually sets up a student really well for Joshua because of all the memorization that they do. So coming in and memorizing the book of Philippians, actually they're pretty well prepared after memorizing the world in Challenge A or memorizing the different speeches that they do in high school. So I thought that was a cool thing. But yeah, student stays busy and there's lots of fun things to do while they're here.
Great. All right, Amanda, do you have any other questions? I'm excited. I want to go back.
All right, so that does lead to this question. So yeah, I'm not 18 to 24. Is there a similar experience for, let's say, the 50-something that's emptied their nest and wants to get back into learning the Old Testament and the New Testament? Is there another marker that you guys have? Not necessarily you'd be the dorm director, but
well, we would just encourage, like come up here and visit Hume. Like Hume's an awesome place, and there's just a lot of really awesome people up here. So if you're not familiar with our ministry, we have a lot of different retreats, women's retreats, fishermen's retreats.
what's a fisherman's retreat? Are they actually fishing in the lake?
They get up so early. They get up like before the sun. They take the boats out. Super, super awesome. And all of these retreats point back to Christ. So they have a speaker that weekend that comes. And so yeah, we just highly encourage, if you're not familiar with Hume, check it out. Come up here, bring your family on vacation. We have a campsite right next to our property. We have hotels and lodges here as well. It's a really sweet place.
So Madison, I tend to ask a question called your 13-year-old self, if you can remember them, what would you tell them now that you'd hope they'd listen to?
That's a great question. I would say that you can do hard things, that you can do things that you never thought you'd be able to do. I never thought I'd move across the country and live in the national forest in California. I think I grew up kind of an anxious kid, and there was a lot of things that to do that, or I don't know if that's for me. I never thought I'd work for camp. Like I'm not an outgoing enough person to do that. I'm not loud. I'm not a recreation lead type of person. But I think, be open to what the Lord has, and don't be afraid to kind of take those steps and do something that maybe he's opening a door for you to do that doesn't seem like you, or maybe you never thought you'd be able to do. Don't be afraid to take those risks and just see what the Lord has for you in that.
Good.
Yeah. Lee.
Yeah, well, I'm excited. It's we're about out of time, so I just wanted to thank you for being with us, Madison. And when we get this posted on at Lee Borton's on YouTube, we'll go ahead and send you a link so you guys can also let folks know that we had this conversation.
Amazing. Appreciate you having me. It's been so sweet to talk about this.
Yeah.
Thanks for making the time. I figure you have students who are eager for you if you're only 2 weeks in. So I appreciate you making the time, Madison.
Absolutely. You guys have a wonderful day.
All right. Thank you so very much. Bye, team.
Bye.
Bye.